Alright guys, welcome back to the podcast. Sorry it's been a while. It's been a busy few weeks leading into Ironman 70.3 Cork, which happened over the weekend. Today's Monday, so I've had a little bit of time to recover, rest and reflect. And in today's episode we're going to get into a bit of a race recap and tell you how it went and what didn't go well, what did go well, and all of the above. So sit tight and let's get into it. So this is my second 70.3 that I have finished. First one was back in Lanzarote in March of this year. I've done a few triathlons over the years. If you've seen any of my social medias or fitness page or anything like that, I've done a number of triathlons, adventure races, marathons. I've done one ultra marathon, so I've done a lot of big events over the years. Now mind you, I'm not an elite athlete. I don't place very high in any of these races. I do them for me and to see what I can do while still leading a balanced lifestyle. And what I mean by that is I still like my food, I still like going for drinks, which means I'll realistically never be an elite athlete, and that is okay. But in the last 2 years, and considering it's kind of now my profession in the fitness industry to be be fit as such, I've taken triathlon especially a little bit more seriously this year, concentrating on obviously 70.3 distance, which is, for all intents and purposes, 70.3 is a half Ironman distance consisting of a 1.9 kilometer swim, a 90 kilometer cycle and a 21.1 kilometer run, so half marathon run. Obviously Lanzarote was my first one of that distance, which went, all things considered, quite well, considering I had COVID back in Christmas and started training just after got COVID, and then between work, everything else, I did what I could, and I ended up doing that Ironman in 7 hours 40 minutes, I believe. So not crazy well, but not absolutely terrible either. I had a decent swim back then, and I had a okay bike. For me, bike isn't or hasn't always been my strongest suit. I'm doing a lot of work on that at the moment, trying to get my bike a lot better. And then the run back in Lanzarote was quite warm, as you'd imagine Lanzarote to be, and I just ended up cramping and jogging, walking a lot of that run. So fast forward to 5 months, a little bit more training, a little bit more knowledge on how to approach the race, and then Saturday morning we headed down to Youghal. I have to say, Youghal turned up. I mean, it was amazing, electric down there. The atmosphere was fantastic. The Youghal people were absolutely amazing. They were out in force at 5 o'clock in the morning to watch all the athletes and their support teams come out and give some support and see what's going on. Got there race morning about just before 5, I think, 5 a.m. Still dark. We headed down to bike transition just to put fuel on my bike. I'd racked the bike the day before, as well as my run gear, which was in a separate transition. So first time for that, where there's actually 2 separate transitions. So obviously swim, bike, run. You do the swim, you come out, you get on your bike. Normally, and what I've done up until now, is wherever you take your bike from, you do your cycle loop and you end up coming back and putting the bike back where you started. This time the you take your bike out, do your 90 kilometers, and the bike actually finishes in a different location, which meant we had to set up our run gear in that location for when we dropped the bike. So with no access to that on the morning, we had to drop all that the day before, but put my race nutrition on my bike, so filled up my water bottles with some carb fuel, electrolytes, and taped some gels to the frame of the bike to get me through 90 kilometers, hopefully fueled as well as I could. Headed down then to swim start, which we had to drop our white bag. For those who know of Ironman, we get a blue bag for your bike gear, red bag for your run gear, and a white bag for your street wear. So basically anything you're wearing before you put on your wetsuit, you can throw into this white bag, drop it with some of the volunteers, and that will be waiting for you at the finish line, so you can get out of your sweaty, salty gear at the end of the race and put on some fresh clothes for afterwards. Headed down then into swim start as everyone was gearing up, music was blaring, getting the adrenaline pumping. Couldn't have asked for a nicer swim start. The water temps were absolutely amazing. I can't remember exactly what the temps were on the day. Obviously the adrenaline pumping and your heart rate up quite high, kind of before those pre-race nerves. You're not going to feel too much of the cold, but honestly that water temp must have been close to 19-20 degrees. It was warm for Irish water. It was actually warm. Amazing thing about this swim is once the gun went off, got in the water, headed out to the first turn buoy, where we turned right. We took another few hundred meters up to the next turn buoy, took a left, another left, and basically the majority of the swim was heading back past the lighthouse and into bike transition. Honestly, probably one of the most glorious swims I've ever actually come across. As we were swimming back, I'd say maybe well, might have been a little bit shorter for some of the top faster swimmers, but for me, about halfway back through the swim, that sun was just creeping up. Beautiful glow of orange coming over the back of the mountains there. As you're coming back into Youghal, it was honestly spectacular. And for those on land spectating, you got the moon, which was pretty much a full moon, I think, maybe not quite, but almost full moon setting in the back, and the sun rising on the opposite direction. Absolutely spectacular. I'd say there's some amazing photos out there of that sunrise. So started to come back. Honestly, I conserved a lot of energy on that swim, just took my time. Ended up actually knocking 5 minutes off my swim time from Lanzarote, even though I was still pacing myself quite easily. If I didn't have to do the rest of the triathlon and I was just out for a morning swim, I probably would have stayed in there for another hour. It was that nice and that warm that yeah, definitely would have stayed in there for another little bit if I didn't have the rest of the race to do. But got out, had definitely felt an improvement in my fitness and strength. Normally when I get out of the water in triathlons over the years, my arms are heavy. These weak. I was going to squint into an Eminem song there, but no, arms normally heavy, and legs quite weak coming out of the water, just because obviously all the blood is in your arms from the swim. But this time I was like concentrating on my kick, getting some blood flow back into the legs before actually getting out of the water. So managed to run up the ramp. Heart rate was actually quite low, all things considered. Managed to take off the top half of my wetsuit quite fast, which if you've ever taken off a wetsuit when your arms are quite heavy and full of blood and lactic acid after a long swim, can be quite quite tough to get that mobility to unzip the back of your wetsuit with your heart rate through the roof as well. But remained calm, ran into bike transition. I kind of went over this transition in my head because I knew back in Lanzarote I spent way too long taking my time, kind of not 100% sure what I was doing, but I wanted to make sure I got everything right. This time I knew exactly what I was doing. Got into bike transition, got my bag. It was in a tent this time, so not out in the open like it was in Lanzarote, so I didn't have sun beating down on me quite just yet. Sat down, put on my bike shoes, put on my socks, put on my bike shoes, grabbed my race belt, put on my helmet, and ran to find my bike. Got on the bike, turned on the bike computer, made sure I switched my watch to bike, headed off out of Youghal town, which was honestly amazing. Carolina was there, screaming her head off at bike transition, as well as everyone else. There was an amazing turnout for, must have been what, 7 o'clock in the morning, maybe just before, yeah, about 7 o'clock in the morning I think, by the time I got out on the bike. So like, amazing crowd to be out there that hour of the morning, and probably been out there since 5:30, 5:45. Headed off on the bike. Luckily there was a nice cool breeze after getting out of the water for the first few kilometers on the bike. Sun hadn't quite got fully risen at this stage, and you know, the sun wasn't beating down quite yet. Temperatures hadn't risen, so first few kilometers was just settle into the bike, allow my heart rate kind of settle down into my tempo, get a feel for the roads, and that first, we'll say 10k of the bike was actually quite nice. Looking back now, I definitely could have went a lot faster, because once we get to the back half of this 90 kilometers, there was a lot of hills and a lot of slow climbing slogs. Now it was quite rolling, but looking back now, definitely could have pushed myself a little bit faster on that bike in the first kind of 20-25k. There was a lot of free speed there that I didn't quite utilize. I was trying to save my legs. I knew at the end of 90 kilometers I still had to try and get up Windmill Hill. Take a look at any of those videos on Ironman Ireland Instagram, by the way, if you haven't seen what it's like to cycle up Windmill Hill. It is torture. Heartbreak Hill, some of the signs were saying halfway up it. But yeah, got out, started getting comfortable in the bike. It was my first time out on my new TT bike for a proper distance. Did a few shorter cycles, and I did 2 races, short distance races, in the last kind of 2-3 months, which were the Blackwater Olympic distance in Fermoy and the Kinsale sprint distance, King of the Hill, only a few weeks ago. But this was its first proper test. I'd made sure mechanically bike was all good, gears were in the right place, as in the truing of the chain was all smooth, so no chain hopping or anything like that, because there was a little bit of a bumpy roads in some sections on this course, but nothing that the bike couldn't handle or was too much, we'll say. I know some of the Europeans and even Americans are probably thinking it was a cross-country race in some parts, but honestly, as far as Irish roads go, it was actually quite smooth, so just take that into consideration. I knew a lot of the course in terms of the roads and the route. We actually cycled past a mobile home park where my grandparents had a mobile home for a few years, where I spent many a summer, so it was actually quite nice coming down that road into Garyvoe. Headed over to Shanagarry, still knew all those roads. Shanagarry into Cloyne, and then Cloyne into, there was definitely something before Middleton, can't remember the name of the town, but through Middleton. It was actually a lot shorter through Middleton than I expected, but still nonetheless there was a few people out giving some cheers. Then once we got past Middleton, which was about the 50-kilometer mark, I think, as far as I remember, that's when the road started getting a little bit tougher. Climbs were not steep, but you know, slow incline, which meant there was no free speed on my TT bike, so slow, kind of grind up some hills. From there it was starting to get tough. It was also starting to get quite warm as well. That sun definitely started to come out and start beating down on us. No wind, which as a cyclist is fantastic, but it also means the sun is quite warm when you're on the climbs, especially when you're not going fast enough to create your own breeze. But yeah, coming down, some of the fast descents then as well after some of those slogs was good. Really got used to some of the bike handling on my TT bike. Getting, like, as if anyone has ever been on a TT bike before, it's a lot different than a road bike in terms of handling and descending and climbing. So it was definitely a bike course that you had to be switched on at all times, which can be kind of mentally fatiguing because you cannot take your eye off that road for a second. There's lots of twists and turns, lots of even little potholes, debris in the road. It is Irish road, so there is going to be some gravel, some not so fantastic roads, but also just the corners. Now, fair play to Ironman, they had warning signs at every sharp turn, every sharp descent, but you still had to be switched on. If you were going too fast for what you were able to control, then you were going to take a fall. So you had to be on those gears, had to be on those brakes, and just confident in your ability to descend and corner on a TT bike. So definitely got a lot of practice in that, but it was mentally fatiguing. Coming into the last kind of 20k, things really started to heat up. A lot more kind of rolling hills. On one of the descents, I think it was just before we went back up another climb for another aids, for the last aid station, I think I was coming down a descent and a bee or wasp ended up coming straight into under my helmet and actually stung me straight away. And honestly, I was lucky I didn't crash the bike because I had to take a hand off the TT bars, and obviously if you've seen a TT bike before, I don't have brakes on the top of the TT bars. They're actually on the lower handlebars, so descending and cornering and trying to take a bee sting out of your helmet is not ideal. Luckily I'm not allergic and I didn't actually swell up or anything. Don't know if I don't think the sting actually stayed in. I think I actually managed to get it out quite fast. Well, once I kind of came to a flat section, which was quite lucky, but a little bit stinging for a while after that, and kind of didn't really knock me, but definitely took me a few seconds to kind of get going again. And then as we climbed up another slow climb, there was a aid station, which I think was the last aid station before coming back into Youghal, so it was quite near the end of the cycle. But as I hit that aid station, I grabbed a banana and I grabbed two 226 gels. So banana in my mouth, grab 2 gels, trying to grab as much as I can getting through that aid station, and literally we come straight into a descent. And I think it's probably the only complaint I'll have about this race is, now it was quite unfortunate, there was a very sharp descent after this aid station. I'm talking like 20, well no that's a lie, probably about 100 meters past this aid station, as I'm trying to, eat a banana, get gels to kind of put them in my back of the tri-suit, but literally come straight into a descent, and as we're coming down around the corner, I'm trying to grab my brakes because people are screaming at me, there's a crash up ahead, and literally within 10 seconds there was an ambulance in the middle of the road. I'm trying to be on the brakes on this descent, banana in my mouth, 2 gels in my hand, trying to slow down, avoid the ambulance, a few other cyclists doing the same thing, and it's just chaos straight into this descent, which means I'm flying down this fucking hill, banana in the mouth. I was like, I don't want to spit it out because I want to eat this banana. It still has the skin on, or well, it's like half a banana with the skin on. So I'm like, right, I can either spit this out, take the hit, and just stay on the bars, or try and hold on to it in my mouth as long as I get to the bottom of this hill. That's what I did. Managed to just bite down on the banana, and well, yeah, that was quite an intense kind of 4 or 5 minutes before another few kilometers back into Youghal, where we meet the infamous Windmill Hill. This is where it gets intense. You're 89 kilometers into a, not the toughest cycle, but not the easiest cycle either. It's still 90 kilometers, you've already done a swim, but it's straight into a right hand sharp turn, into a very sharp gradient, and it just goes up. I think it's about 500 meters long, so it's not crazy. It could be shorter, but it tops out, I think, 21-22%. It averages about 12-13%. And I just went, I knew coming into it, I was like, right, into the granny gear, into that low easy gear. I was rocking a 1128 on my TT bike, so not ideal. Definitely not the easiest gear to get up a steep climb in. And a TT bike isn't also not a great bike to climb any steep hill in. But we made a go of it. Got, I'd say, the bones of 3/4 the way up. My quads were screaming. Didn't want to give up. Kept trying to push. I was out of the saddle. I was pushing down on those pedals to try and keep my quads from going. And one pedal stroke, I felt my quad on my right leg just lock out. As in, I've never come across something to lock out so much. I luckily managed to unclip my left leg out of the pedal. I stopped the bike, pulled to the side, didn't fall, but just about managed to then kind of squeeze my right leg out of the pedal and swing it over the bike. One of the marshals on the sidelines were trying to ask what they could do, like, do you need help, I'd be like, I can't bend my knee. My quad had literally shifted all the way over to the right hand side, fully locked out, and no matter what I did, could not bend my knee. They were like, oh, like, lie down on the floor. One of the marshals took my bike and the other marshal was trying to get my leg to unlock. They were like, oh shoot, this lovely lady, she's like, oh, what can I do? I was like, just push the back of my knee. She was like, what? She was like, oh, I'll try and massage the quad, let it loosen out. I was like, no, just, I need to get up this hill and get into the run transition. I was like, punch the back of my knee, whatever you gotta do, just fucking hit it, get that leg, get the knee to bend. She was looking at me kind of funny, and at this point I was like, I need to get up this hill. I need to just keep going, because if I don't, it's game over. So eventually she was like, okay, so she started pushing the back of my knee, and I could feel the kind of quad coming back into place slowly but surely, and then I was like, right, just fucking, I kind of gave it a punch myself, kind of locked out, picked up my bike, walked, I'd say maybe 10 meters or so until the gradient eased out, maybe very slightly, got back on, luckily didn't cramp or lock out again, got to the top of Windmill Hill, and kind of just rolled into bike transition, which was about another 100 meters to the right of Windmill Hill at the top. Definitely took me a second to kind of recover from that. I knew heading out into the run, my quads were going to be a little sore after that. So I took that extra kind of few minutes that I probably didn't need to, but just to be sure in transition, take that few extra seconds. I think actually looking at my transition times, I was going over all my details of transition times because that was one of the things I wanted to work on. My transition 1 from swim to bike was just over 5 minutes, which I think was about 3 minutes faster than I was in Lanzarote, which was a huge improvement. And then T2, which is bike to run, was 8 minutes 28 seconds, which I think was a minute or two faster than Lanzarote. So again, a good improvement there in transition times, which is something I was looking to improve because that's something where you can actually make up quite a bit of time if you're smart about it. Now, I did get caught for a few seconds in T2 because as I was putting on some factor 50 heading out into the run, two guys either side of me asked if they could borrow my factor 50 to put some on themselves. Thought about just giving it to them and letting them deal with the factor, but I was like, oh, I kind of want this factor 50 back. I'm gonna need it for the rest of the weekend too. So I took that few seconds, let them put on some factor 50, threw it in my bag, and headed out into the run. Took that few seconds. I knew I was heading into a downhill first kind of kilometre, maybe kilometre and a half downhill until we get to the flat section of Yol. So kind of took my time, settled into a slow but steady pace, and I knew from Lanzarote that if I went out too hard my heart rate would not settle. So plan for this was no matter how fast I was running or how slow I was running, if my heart rate got over 170, I actually had an alert on my watch that if my heart rate got to 170 or plus, it would actually beep, so that I knew I need to settle down, because if I was at 170 or 170 plus heart rate, I would just burn out that run and would not be able to finish. So goal was to finish on my feet, not crawling or not finish. So not finishing was not an option. So I headed off. Every time I kind of got up to 168, 169, even if I felt quite strong, but I noticed that heart rate going up, I would actually slow down and actually come to a walk for a few seconds. Might only be a few seconds, but just kept a nice slow steady pace. Aim was to try and beat all of my time swim, bike and run from Lanzarote. Thought I was doing a lot better. I actually felt I ran a lot more of this half marathon than Lanzarote, but as we got through it, looking at my pacing, I thought I was doing okay, but the heat was just absolutely ridiculous. But I must give a shout out to the people of Yol. At every couple of 100 meters there was someone with a hose, buckets of water, cups, water, everything. I think I must have been hosed down like at least 50 times, and then dried out by the next time I got to someone with a hose, and got washed down again. Just trying to keep that body temperature down. Again, looking at my heart rate, in those temperatures, if your heart rate gets up, you're gonna suffer. Now you're suffering anyway, but high heart rate, high heat and exertion equals disaster. So I was very aware of my heart rate throughout the entire race. Kept motoring through. I think the first 10k I was on pace for a better half marathon than Lanzarote. Still quite slow, but I was on pace. But that second half of that run, where we were to do another loop, it was just getting hotter and hotter. And an issue that I didn't see coming was fluid retention, and I think that probably played a part in my disaster run in Lanzarote, but I didn't notice it too much because in Lanzarote I was definitely short on sodium, which meant my quads were actually cramping up every, slight incline, or anytime I tried to run, my quads would actually cramp. This time, yeah, sure, my quads were sore, but I'm still doing a half Ironman. There's no one not going to be sore, but I definitely felt a lot stronger and a lot fitter. My big issue on that kind of last 10k was, and if you actually look at some of my pictures from the run, taken by Carolina or my mom, there's some run photos there, and I look like my stomach is about to burst, and that is not being a fat fucker, because I've been very conscious of that over the last few weeks. Well, not conscious, but as in I've been working hard to get my nutrition back to something decent, but my stomach was actually bloated to fuck, and I felt it on the run, but you can definitely see it in some of the pictures where my stomach is literally out, pushing out against my race belt, and all I felt for that back 10k were sloshing of gels, waters, everything else sugary that I put into my body over the last number of hours. So every time I tried to run, my legs were fine, but I felt like I either needed to pee, poo, or puke. So anytime I got up to speed in running, my body would just go, uh-oh, we don't know which one we're going to do, but something's going to happen sooner or later. I think on the last 5k I jumped into a portaloo just to see what was going to happen. Luckily I peed, and that did kind of relieve a good bit of pressure on my stomach. Not all of it, but allowed me enough to kind of keep moving at a half decent pace for that last 5k and actually run to the finish line, because I don't think I would have made it otherwise. I was going to either pee, puke, or poo somewhere along the way, which definitely would have meant me stopping. But got into that last kilometre, and if you ask anyone who does any of these races, the crowd, the adrenaline, and everything else will just find you another gear, and you will just run to that finish line. And that's what I did. There was one guy in front of me, and normally I've got a slight mentality, whether I'm the last two runners or I'm winning a race or God only knows what. No matter where I come in the race, if someone's in front of me, I'm going to try and pass them in the last 200 meters. But this guy started to kind of enjoy the red carpet and started high-fiving everyone, and I didn't want to be that asshole who just ran straight past him and took the victory. So I ran up alongside him and I told him, come on, let's fucking sprint. But he was more involved in trying to high-five everyone and come down the red carpet, which, look, enjoy that finish line as much as you can. So I was like, come on, let's run. And he was like, no, go for it. I'm like, okay, buddy. So I kind of ran but didn't sprint past him. I was like, oh, let's come in together, blah, blah, blah. But looking back now, he was kind of trying to enjoy it more, so I don't think he would have cared too much if I just ran past. Which I would normally have done in any other race, just to get across the line and push whoever was next to me to, give that little last bit of sprint and give it everything to get across that finish line. But I enjoyed it straight up until the finish line. Even though I suffered through that run, it was an amazing race. An amazing support down in Youghal, which is absolutely fantastic. I think even looking at some of the comments on Facebook, on any of those groups, everyone that's not from Ireland are commenting, putting up posts saying it's probably one of the best Ironman they've done ever in terms of the crowd, the support out. You just don't get it anywhere else. And I believe it because the people of Youghal came out and they absolutely showed up. Whether it was, oh sorry, just hit the mic. Whether that was just cheering people on, out with water and hosing people down, everything, they were just fantastic. So cannot wait to come back next year, and hopefully we get some good weather, but maybe a little bit colder next year. I know it can't be perfect. First year they did this race for the full, they had to cancel the swim and it was absolutely just a downpour back in 2019. We finally got some good weather, but it definitely was a little bit hot for people, especially myself. But now I suppose the thing that people have been waiting for: how did I do? What was my times? Blah blah blah. So good news is I came out to beat my time in Lanzarote, whether that was by 30 seconds or whatever it was. That's all I wanted to do. Didn't want to break any records, but I wanted to beat my time from Lanzarote. So overall time, I can tell you, it was 7 hours, 7 minutes and 18 seconds. That means I have about a 35-minute PR from Lanzarote overall. Now, if you want to break down into the swim, bike, run, and even transitions, I think I talked about the transitions there a second ago. But my swim, even though I was still taking it easy, which I did in Lanzarote as well, I was taking it easy on the swim because, look, this is a triathlon. You can't go all out in either of these because you'll blow up in the rest. So, nice and easy. I got a 5-minute PR on the swim course. So that was a 40-minute swim, which was about just over 2 minutes, 100 meters. Transition time, like I said, I think I beat my transition time by, I think looking back, nearly 3-4 minutes, which is a big time from T1. Onto the bike, I have so let me do the math, about a 27-minute PR on the bike for 90k, which is good. Now, obviously bike courses are different everywhere. 90 kilometers is not going to be the same everywhere, but average speed was definitely faster and elevation was a little bit lower, but definitely I think having that climb at the end made it a very tough bike course before starting the run. Your quads are blown. In Lanzarote, the last like 5k are downhill and a roll into transition where you can kind of loosen the legs out, freewheel and spin. This is blow your quads and then run downhill, blow your quads. So quite a tough transition from bike to run here in Cork. T2, I think only about a minute or two. The time difference between this one and Lanzarote. And then onto the run. Even though I felt stronger on the run, and I think looking at the splits, the first 10k were definitely faster here. But that last 10k where I had water, gels and fluid retention just slashing around in my stomach and messing things up a bit, I ended up running about a minute slower than Lanzarote. Now, I'm still happy with it because I felt stronger. My quads and my legs and my body were still good. It was the heart rate and stomach issues this time. So, another thing to try and learn and dial in and get better. Obviously I would have preferred a lot faster run, but there's time to improve. And we're going to come back next year and do it again. And probably a few other big races. So yeah, overall 7 hours, 7 minutes, end up being about a 35-minute PR, which I'm happy with. Now I'd still prefer to be under 7 hours, but that is all going to come with patience, time and a lot more work. So what is my plans coming into off season or end of season / off season, and then for the next year. Well, I can tell you I'm 100% sticking with triathlon for the next few years. Do I put it out here now, some goals for accountability, put it out there on the interwebs? Yeah, why not? Look, if I don't put them out there and I don't have accountability, then they'll never happen. So let's manifest these into real things and let's get them going. I want to come back and do this course again, obviously next year, hopefully. I'm going to tell you now, I have no intentions of running a full Ironman for another few years. I will eventually, that will be a goal somewhere down the line. But I actually quite like 70.3 distance and will love to improve quite a lot on it. So main goal is to get under 6 hours for 70.3. Now I know it's ambitious, that's a whole other hour, but I know I have a lot to give in terms of improvements, like knowing my limits individually. On swim, bike, run, I have so much improvement that can be done. The run especially, I have in the past ran a half marathon in 1:38 or 1:39 I think is my PR for a half marathon. Now obviously after a 90-kilometer bike, you're not going to be running your half marathon pace if it was just a standalone event. But main goal for run is get the run under 2 hours. So that's knocking half an hour off, which is doable, but it is something that's going to get me down to about 6.5 hours. Now, where do I make up the rest of that time to get under 6 hours? Well, ideally the bike is going to be your biggest chunk of time that I can knock off. Looking at 3:40 for the bike, that averaged me a pace of 24, let's round up to 25 kilometers an hour, which is, yeah, it's okay. But this bike course definitely could have been a lot faster. Yes, there's some tough hills at the start, or sorry, at the second half of that course, which were, you know, a slog, but I definitely could have pushed myself a little bit faster on the first half and took advantage of that. That's my fault, didn't do a full-on race recce beforehand, but it's okay. We learn and we evolve and adapt. So, and I know I have a lot of work to do on the bike in general in terms of strength and power, because even though I'm a half decent climber, not on a TT bike, but in general I can climb in a light gear and keep pushing forward quite well, I find it hard and struggle to put power down on the flat, which means on flat sections and down hills to keep power on the pedals and maintain that power. So that's my goal for the bike. Try increase that to about let's say 40 minutes off the bike, half an hour to 40 minutes off the bike. And then the swim, honestly, I have another 10 minutes in that swim to knock off. Like, I am a good swimmer, I know I'm a good swimmer. I'm not the fastest right now, but 40 minutes of that swim yesterday or Saturday was so easy for me. As in, it didn't take too much out of me. I think looking back at my heart rate for that swim, I can tell you, if I just look it up, that swim was 40-minute workout, and my average heart rate was 110. Like, that's an easy swim for me. Average heart rate of 110 over 40 minutes for, a swim. There was a lot more to give in that swim, without doing too much damage coming onto bike and run. So 10 minutes in the 10 minutes in the swim to improve, 30 minutes in the bike, and 30 minutes in the run. That will get me under 6 hours. Now, when do I hope to do this? I'm giving next year. I'm not talking like 2-3 months. I'm talking a year of solid work, some more short course racing next year, sprint and Olympic distance, to improve on some speed, on some technical aspects of it, like getting my transition times down again, getting my just like technical aspects of the bike, run, everything, just even like where to place myself in the swim, because I think placing in the swim I'm a little bit reserved, and I feel I should definitely put myself a little bit further up in terms of timing, which will get me out faster, which will get me into a better swim group, which in turn will get me a better swim time. I think I kind of handicap myself by going, oh, I'll reserve myself and go into a slower swim group, and then I get caught with people swimming left and right and across me and knocking into people, and or me catching up to people and kind of grabbing their feet and them kicking me, etc. So yeah, give myself a year. That's the race I want to get under 6 hours in. Yes, I'm going to go away and look at some other 70.3s next year. Probably look at doing the Lost Sheep as well, which is a Cork Tri-Club race, I believe, which is held down in Kerry. That is my main goal, 6 hour or sub 6 hour half Ironman, and hopefully improve even more from there. I think I've got a good, honestly, looking at some of the guys in all the different age groups and their times, I've got a good 15 years still, 10 to 15 years of being slightly competitive. Not professional, I have no intentions of going professional. No potential to go fucking professional anyway right now, not at those fucking paces, but I have about 10-15 years of improving and getting quite competitive in all of those age groups. Currently I am in the 30 to 34 age group. I'm 31, so next season for these races I'll be 32, which gives me another 2-3 years in this age group to improve, but then I'll be up to the 35 to 39 age group, I think, which is, I don't know, going to be harder, easier, I don't know, but I'm going to stay as competitive as I can, or get as competitive as I can over the next number of years, focusing on triathlon. So with that being said, guys, thank you for chiming in. If you have any other questions on Ironman, triathlon, or anything the above, training, etc., I'm going to give it another while before I talk. I might even talk with Conrad about off-season or end-of-season, off-season training coming into the next few months. So stay tuned. I'll be talking about nutrition in the coming weeks as well, because that is one big aspect that that fourth discipline of triathlon is your nutrition. So I'm going to be looking at that to dial in a bit more over the coming few weeks, months, and even year, to get down to a proper racing weight, which I think definitely had some bit of hindrance on my run time especially. But that is all for another episode. Guys, thank you for chiming in, thank you for listening, and we will see you in the next one. Take care.